Hey, Dad, welcome to part 6 of a 6-part series. And you might be listening to the Father on Purpose podcast for the very first time going, hey, wait a minute. Where were the first 5 parts? Well, welcome to the show. We're so glad that you are aboard. You have 2 choices to make. Number 1, stop now and go back and listen to the last 5 episodes and get all caught up on this 6-part series. Or just hang in there, listen to today's show, and then later meander through the first 5 and put it all together. It's a series we're calling From Overwhelmed to Intentional, and it is based specifically on a bunch of survey data we have from dads over the last several years, them telling us what is your biggest challenge, and it all kind of boils down to dads trying to move from this mental state, this spiritual state of feeling overwhelmed and kind of crushed by life's various pressures to being more intentional and to leading on purpose. And so we're excited to talk to you about that. Today, we're going to be on part 6. And the working title for today's is something that we want to use to tie this all together. And it is being clear when the world is loud. Being clear when the world is loud, because believe it or not, as a dad, despite all of the voices and the societal and cultural pressures, you have a tremendous amount of potential influence if you can be clear while the world is loud. Before we dive all the way in, remember, today's show is brought to you by Range Leather. When you go to their website, use the code MJ15 to get 15% off your next order. That's at rangeleather.com. You can get bags and earrings and Apple Watch bands and folios and wallets. Go now, go to rangeleather.com and use the code MJ15. Secondly, our Fatherhood Guard is nearing 100 people. We're over 90. Maybe you will tip us over the scale of 100 monthly supporters. We cannot run our ministry without monthly support. It's about 20% of our budget. And so go there now. Go to manhoodjourney.org/guard, Guard. Become part of the Fatherhood Guard, and we will send you a slick Range Leather hat to commemorate joining the team. I was just thanking people this week, Lawson, who have recently jumped into the Fatherhood Guard from places like Texas, California, you name it. We have guys from 22 or 23 states and even a couple foreign countries. Go now and support us every month. We really do need your help, and we thank you in advance for doing that. Lawson, Overwhelmed to Intentional, part 6. What do you think about being clear when the world is loud?
Where I started was thinking about, and I want to avoid something. I feel like sometimes I'm a sort of a broken record, Kent. I feel like sometimes my answer to things lands on finding peace or finding quiet, and maybe having a moment. And maybe that's applicable here. Let me talk it out, but I do feel bad sometimes, man. I was thinking about it this morning, like, are most of my answers having something to do with like, go find somewhere to, get quiet or get away from it or whatever?
There's a quote attributed to a guy named Samuel Johnson, a British guy. And it used to say, it's something like, man needs more to be reminded than to be instructed. And so there are times when sometimes we got the same 5 things that we need to be reminded of. So let's go, man. Be the broken record.
Yeah. So I started with, all right, if our role in helping our family is to help with clarity, when the world is loud, what is loud? And I think, I'm actually reading a book called The Comfort Crisis.
Whoa.
And
like
it's interesting. It's not it's not a
it's not a Ken Evans book, but I mean it's probably
not
doing
a Ken
pinch.
Evans book. Yeah. No, unfortunately no. So it's like, okay, it's not great.
It'll do in a pinch.
Yeah. And it's not even a faith based, but he doesn't realize he's preaching some faith-centered, some Jesus-centered lessons in this book. But it is about our world today is very comfortable. Is very anything that we need is kind of easy to get. We're not out hunting. We're not out living in the open space, in the in the wild, in the weather. Um, and so maybe that's why part of this was on my mind, but, like, what is loud about this
Mm.
world that we live in to me? It's a handful of things. It's instant access to information, and I'm talking about to me, sometimes, I think back to when I was a kid, life just felt more simple, seemed more simple. It wasn't
Yeah.
always coming at us. Um, it is there are unlimited sources competing for our attention, and that creates something. Um, our entertainment is primarily through screens. And particularly younger kids, it seems like. In the book that I'm reading, The Comfort Crisis, he says something like, um, I didn't go back and research it, so don't hold me accountable for this. It's
It's okay. You're
something
only
about,
saying it on a recorded platform where we're accountable for every word we
yeah,
say,
that's
but
okay,
continue.
yeah.
No, no,
So,
continue.
but I'm asterisks
Loose.
here saying this is wrong. This is probably not right. Um, the point is, uh, people under 25 spend about 90% of their, waking hours with some sort of screen.
Mm.
Um,
I'm sure it's really
and
high. Yeah.
yeah, right. I do feel like this guy did some research, but, I did not. So that's probably not exactly correct, but you get the point. Um,
If
a
you've
few other
tuned into the
things.
Father on Purpose podcast looking for in-depth research,
Right.
you
We
have
just
come to the
make it
wrong
up
place.
as we go. Um, yeah, there's a nonstop race to know
Yeah.
first or know
Yeah.
more. And so there's this just frenetic energy, about knowing things. And then you've got, layer on all that, there are demands of school and demands of work. And so what that equates to me to be is there are rare pockets and places for peace.
Mm.
And so when we're talking about, being the dad that can help
That's good.
be clear,
Yeah.
we need to recognize some of these things. Our bodies and minds, they are not purpose built. God did not build us to just get inundated at all times. And so what do we need? We need a break from this pace, this environment, these habits, the pressures. Um, and you can tell when you are receiving a clear signal from God. That's kind of what I want to wrap this, tie it back to is you hear him much more clearly when you aren't in a frenetic,
Yeah.
noisy,
Yeah.
nonstop environment.
It's interesting. The metaphor that I think of in this regard, and I love metaphors, they break down, but I think they're handy, right? The metaphor I think of is if someone bought a ticket to a concert and they walk in and it's open seating, okay? And they get to sit wherever they like. And they walk up to the very, very front of the concert on the far side, and they sit directly in front of the speaker system on the floor,
Mm,
right? I mean, like 4 feet from the speaker system. And then when the concert starts, they go, golly, this is so loud. Like, this
right.
is irritating. You would say to that guy, hey, man, you chose where you sat. Like,
Mm,
excuse me. You had so many options. There's thousands of seats in here. You chose to sit right in front of the speaker, and now you're going to gripe and complain about the volume. This is what is happening for so many dads in our culture.
mm.
We're sitting our children in front of the speaker, and
Ooh.
then we're going, oh my gosh, I can't believe what's happening with all these voices in their ears. Wait a
Mm,
minute, man. Who gave them that iPad? Who gave them that cell phone with unlimited access? Who took them to that event that you knew was not going to broadcast a worldview that you think is appropriate for their age? Who put them out in the middle of traffic and then said, gee, these cars better be more careful?
right.
We say like the world is assaulting us with information. Or recently, I saw an article where there's a lawsuit making its way through America. And I think in some ways it's going to be interesting to see what the ramifications are about social media. Now Australia has already restricted social media for any kid under, I forget the age, 16, I think, 15, 16. France is considering it. England's considering it. Children exposed to social media at a young age are showing deep psychological problems. Who is surprised by this? Right? Like, what parent is going, wow, I really thought unfettered access to Instagram was a blessing. I mean, what? Come on, man. And so what I find interesting is the world loud? Sure. Do we have access to information that is unprecedented by a factor of maybe thousands or 10,000s of
Right.
we have access, but the reason we sit in front of that speaker, 2 feet from that speaker, is because we choose to. We
Right.
choose to. And until we recognize we have a little bit of power in that area, we're still going to be flapping in the
True.
breeze of the cultural winds, right?
Yeah, and you're like, "Why aren't they listening to me?" Well, because they can't hear. Um,
They're right in front of the
and
speaker.
and unfortunately, I feel like God does that often, with me too. Like, you keep asking, but you don't listen. Like, you throw a prayer out there and then,
That's right.
turn the TV back on or whatever. And so I wondered, so as dads, how do we compete at that level? We ca I don't feel like we can. I don't feel like I'm not gonna start a better app that's gonna gain their attention more often, or a TV show or, something like that. That's just not gonna happen for me. And so, how do we
Daddy
compete?
Crush Saga. We're gonna beat Candy
Yeah,
Crush
right.
with the
Now that
Dad
would be
Crush
different.
Saga. That's not gonna work.
Right. I don't think we do compete. I think we change the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we'll get into that when we talk about the key reframe, but go through some of the challenges that
Yeah,
that resulted in this episode even being a part of
yeah.
the topic.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's not true. I'm not saying the speakers aren't blaring. I'm just saying we do have some degree of choices where we sit. But these challenges are real, right? I'm not debating that they're not there. Battling outside influences, that's been true since the dawn of time, but it just has gotten more complicated
Right.
in the last, 30 to 50 years with access to tech. Technology's impact. I'll give you a good example in a second. Or letting go in ways where April and I will occasionally joke. It's like controlled detonation. Think of the bomb squad. When something's got to go wrong, it goes wrong in an environment where you can
Ah,
control how the
okay.
damage.
That's
It's
pretty
like
cool. Yeah.
the steel bubble over the explosive, and then you detonate it on purpose, but the detonation stays controlled. There is some degree where I want my boys exposed to certain things at certain ages
Mhm. Mhm.
so that I can coach them through that. Now, I think there's an extreme there that's completely unwise, right? Um, and I won't get into all that, but or even leaving a legacy. Some dads believe it's their job to leave some kind of legacy, and that's in one sense it's true, right? We want to tie our kids to Christ and give them the opportunity to choose God. Yeah, that's leaving a great spiritual legacy, but it doesn't mean that my name gets emblazoned on, the doorpost of my grandkids' houses. And they're like, "Oh, Grandpa Kent, he was the best." No, it's not that. That's not the legacy we're trying to leave. We're trying to leave a legacy that's tied to Jesus. When I think about something like technology and the challenge that we have when being clear when the world is loud, it's real. I'm not debating it. Having said that, I think there are a couple remedies. Remedies is probably too strong a word. Ideas that I would propose. To your point, we got to change the game. I'm not going to try to become as entertaining as a Marvel movie or anything like that, or
Mhm.
as funny as a comedian who uses a lot of coarse language and filthy. I'm not going to try to like win at that exact game or build a video game that's more fun than every other video. Like I'm not going to beat Fortnite at its own game. However, I'm not after their surface level attention. I'm after their heart. I'm after a connection that is deeper than any of those systems or technologies can make.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
as an example, and we could
There you
come up with
go.
10 of
There
these.
you go.
We can come up with 10 of these, but let me just give you one. When your child, daughter or son, is 13 or 14 or 15 and their friends, and I'm not going to create some rubric for when you should give your kid an iPhone or if you should ever give them an iPhone, et cetera. I'm not going to get into that debate exactly because that's very wisdom driven and to each his own. However, the issue early when they're maybe, I don't know, 10, 11, 12, 13, is they start to see their friends get devices or get permission to do things, and they don't want to feel quote unquote left out.
Mhm.
and they don't want to feel quote unquote different. Okay, they want to fit in and they want to be in the know. All right. That is a heart related posture you can address separate from the when do you get an iPhone debate. And here's what I mean. As believers in the world, are we called to look exactly like the world and fit in?
Right. Perfect.
No, we're
Yep.
not.
Right. Right.
No, we're not. We're actually, in fact, called to the opposite. We're called to look different than the world in many, many ways. So, at our heart level, that's the pull. The pull is not, do I get a phone? Do I know what's happening this weekend? Can I like a joke that's going around the school? That's not the heart pull. The heart pull is, am I going to fit in or be unique? That's
Mhm.
the heart pull. And that you can have 1 or 50 or 500 conversations about that over dinner and help your son or daughter unpack that and get to the root issue of why. Why do
Mhm.
you want to not be
Mm.
left out? Why do you want to feel like you're part of
Yeah.
the and when we get to that, we're we're playing chess and the world's playing checkers, right? We
Yeah.
can get to a more sophisticated, a more heart led and a deeper spiritual posture than just, hey, look, the Surgeon General said iPhones are bad and so
Yeah. Yeah.
social
Yeah.
media. Therefore, no, no, no,
Yeah.
no,
Get off that
stop.
phone. Right. Yeah. Um, do something with this, if you will. So
Well, it
Jesus
depends on
and
how
the
crazy it is, but I'm going to try.
you no, you'll like
No,
this. You'll
continue.
you'll you'll latch onto this.
I'll allow it.
Jesus and the disciples. I mean, what he was talking was radically different.
Mm.
You know, and so and these guys that he rounded up, they were not from the top universities of the time. They weren't from leadership positions exalted in the political system or, leading a big business. Maybe you could argue Matthew as a tax collector had, had his fingers in, kind of the business at the time. Um, but what he was talking about was very, very different than what they had grown up with or what the dominant, news of the day or message of the day rather. And so he had to have their trust because he wasn't with them at all times 24/7 and they were hearing things from others or maybe wondering themselves, and maybe drifting a little off path. And so Jesus was repetitive. Jesus was
Mm.
investing in their relationships. Luke 5:15 also, I'm gonna double down on this kinda time and peace and space away from the noise. Luke
Yeah.
5:15 says, "But now even more the report about him went abroad, and great crowds gathered to hear him and to be healed of their infirmities, but he would withdraw to desolate places and pray." And Mark 1:35 says, "But now even more." Oh wait, no, sorry. I copied the wrong thing. Um, yeah, hang on a
Jesus
second.
wept.
I
Somehow
want
we're
to get
going to
this
tie that
right.
in.
Yeah. Oh, here it is. Mark 1:35. And rising very early in the morning, while it was still dark, he departed and went out to a desolate place, and there he prayed. I think here's some thoughts for changing the game and modeling kind of the way Jesus acted and led his life. Number one, there when everyone else is yelling, when the world is yelling and frenetic and it's everywhere, as a dad, we can focus on truth
Yeah.
and listening, you
Mm.
know, we can
Yes.
listen and land on God's word and prayer. Number 2, s I use the word steadfast in my little note here, but steadfast pace
Mm.
and a consistent face. Um, I was taught early on as a brand new lieutenant, platoon commander. We had a battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Keenan. He said, "Leaders aren't frenetic. They're not frantic. They're
Mm.
not running around because in a storm, what you wanna do is look over and see the leader being calm and consistent and steadfast. That calms everyone else. If the
Mm.
leader is going crazy, then that action, that behavior becomes contagious."
Oh,
And then
wow.
3 is do our best. We can't always, but do our best to create a vacuum of peace. I think solace is
Mm.
attractive. When people are frenzied and stressed, um, and the noise is overwhelming, it is natural to find and enjoy and accept and embrace this peaceful place. And so as dads, I think what you're saying is you realize I didn't mean to do this, or I didn't even notice that this happened, but they're sitting in front of those huge speakers, these amplifier speakers. Um, well, you go create a vacuum of peace, you go get that. You go get them and remove them. You go unplug the speaker. And sometimes that is met with a lot of resistance,
Yeah.
depending on how deeply those roots go, but that's our role is not to be liked. It's okay to be, the person who interrupts that cycle.
Yeah. I've never met this gentleman, but man, it'd be cool if I met him before, his or my time on earth is done. But his name is Nicky Gumbel, and he founded the Alpha Project. He is well-known author, pastor from England. And I heard him say on a podcast about a year ago, or actually, no, I heard someone who used to work for him, a direct report, who said he would say all the time, "Hey guys, let's remember, intensity is not a fruit of the spirit." And I,
Mm,
and
ooh,
I, and I love that line because
yeah.
it's anti-American almost. It's like the thing
Yeah,
that
ambition is not one either.
yeah, and so there is a thing called, sanctified or holy ambition. There is a thing called, godly passion. It can happen, but just because you're intense or passionate doesn't necessarily mean you're going God's direction, right? Think of the fruit of the spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. Gentleness? How many of us dads, if we gave our kids a list of 100 adjectives and said, "Hey, circle 5 that describe me," how many of our kids would circle gentleness? Or how many of our kids would circle peaceful? And you just go, "Wait a minute. That is, in fact, how we are clear and spiritually on target when the world is loud." When the world is loud. To your point about your Lieutenant Colonel Keenan, leaders aren't frantic. Now, there are moments. Yeah, I remember a legend here in the Evans family, and by legend I mean an 100% true story that I just don't like to talk about. My son Jonathan was out playing near an open fire one day when he was little. I can't remember his age, but he was really young, 5, 4. I mean, very, very young. And a basketball came over, bounced, hit a stick he had that was on fire, hit his face, and all of a sudden he's got like burning mouth and he's screaming and crying. And
Yeah.
so I did what any cool-headed, collected, and calm father would do in the moment. I grab him like a sack of potatoes, right? I go running in the house. I sit him on the counter against his will, literally put his legs in the sink, and I take the faucet that extends and start spraying his face with the faucet. Um, that is not in the Calm Parents Handbook for reacting to burns. That is not how you're supposed to react. I was panicked. I was frantic. In fact, I think he had more trauma from the waterboarding that I was doing of him on the sink than the burn, right? I mean, it was crazy. And we all laugh about it now. Like, remember that time Dad almost drowned Jonathan because he got a little burn mark on his face? The other thing that we do around here that is 100% attributed to my lovely wife, April, is we are pretty serious about Sunday Sabbaths. And I'm not going to get in the debate of Old versus New Testament. Is a tithe really 10%, et cetera? What I'm going to say is I think Jesus reinforced that Sabbaths are a good thing. He did also reinforce that Sabbath is for man. Man's not for the Sabbath. Got it. So it's not this legalistic thing where I go to hell if I don't have 52 Sabbaths in a year. I understand. But man, I'll bet you 50 weeks out of 52, we don't plan anything on a Sunday that is at all like going and running and being gone. We take it easy. And we get a lot of, not a lot, we get a fair amount of requests for time on Sundays. It's this birthday party or this event or this concert or whatever. And man, like 9.5 out of 10, we're just like, nope, sorry. And people can judge me about, so you're not going to go to your nephew's birthday party on a Sunday. Maybe not. Honestly, maybe not. Is that right or wrong? I'm not going to debate it. What I am going to say is it's one way we try to say, hey, man, we're going to try to slow this family down at least once a week so we can catch our breath and rest. And we feel like it's following God's example. I may get some hate mail or some emails on that one, but still send them all to Lawson. He handles all that. He's in the complaint resolution department around here. What I think's interesting is there's a verse in scripture, Hebrews 13:8. And it says, Jesus is the same yesterday and today and forever. Jesus is the same yesterday and today and forever. And I think sometimes, Lawson, you comment on this, please. We can be tricked into thinking we live in unprecedented spiritual times where it's almost like God is surprised by the internet, or God did not see airplane travel coming in the future, or
Right.
there's something about our modern society where we're like, oh God, you don't understand. Okay, see, all that was true back in like 8 BC. None of that's true anymore because wow, Instagram, or wow, talk shows, or wow, these politics or this school agenda or this group. Okay, time out. Jesus is the same yesterday and today and forever.
Mm.
There's something about that constancy that gives us some peace and some clarity when the world is really loud.
Yeah, I'm not the same yesterday and today and forever. Neither are you, and neither is any dad. Um, and so we get caught up in this too, and we are just as susceptible. And if you think you're not, pay attention. Look at your screen time. Look at is the TV on a lot? Are you distracted with radio shows or podcasts or YouTube or, whatever? How many times do your kids pull on your pants leg or, and you're in the middle of something and you push them off? Man, if there was a hidden camera following me around, um, with a note taker that just made tick marks every time I was not engaged and, not there, not present, I'd be, shocked, I think. I think a lot of us would be
Mm,
shocked. And
mm.
so being the same yesterday and today and forever, I don't feel like we're capable of doing that. Jesus is. God is always there. God never changes. The circumstances may be different, like you're talking about
Sure,
today.
yeah.
You know, we have automobiles and jets and TVs. Like, think of before the television. What did dads and moms sit around going, "These kids are always distracted," like before the radio or the TV and then before the iPhone, what was it? There's always something. Now there may be varying degrees, but the point is the same, and that is that that we are able at all times to point our family back to what never changes, because we will be at fault. And so take that pressure off yourself. Don't point them at us. Let's not try to be the example. And like we talked about last episode, let's not try to be the hero. Let's not try to get it all right and then beat ourselves up every time we don't and feel like a failure as a father when we don't, because we won't. We're not gonna. Um, and so our role is to point them to what does not ever change.
What I think's fascinating about this topic is at the heart of it, I think it gets down to whether the dad listening feels like he has zero control over the situation, 100% control over the situation, or some version of control. And so here's what I mean. Again, back to the metaphor of going into the concert venue and sitting right next to the speaker. If you've chosen to do that, if you've chosen to pull the world, like if you got 12 televisions in your house and they're always running, April and I will occasionally, be places where the TV patterns or the patterns at a place are very different from ours. We're not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying they're very different. And I personally don't understand why someone would want to wake up at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. and instantly turn on like
Yeah.
local or national news and just roll around in the tragedy of this world. Like, I don't understand it. I've never understood it. 3 or 4 years ago, I was one of the very few guys in the publishing world or the who was talking about, "Man, I'm not sure social media is really as good as some people have say it is." Uh, and I feel like I'm slightly being vindicated a little bit in that as these things come out about anxiety and depression. Because here's the truth of the matter. The truth of the matter is, we have the ability to refocus, especially if you have young kids around the house. We have the ability to refocus conversations, dialogue, use of our time, kind of like a magician does sleight of hand, right? Misdirection. So recently, I'm in the car. Not long ago, I was in the car, and there were several young boys in the car, and the conversation drifted toward another young boy who was not in the car, and there was some critical comments being made, right? And I had a choice to make. I had a choice to make. Do I rebuke these young men and go, "Hey, knock it off, you losers"? That's an option. And I have done that before, like depending on my relationship and my depth of connection. Uh, or do I just shift the conversation?
Hmm.
I chose the second one in this case. And I just said, "Hey, I got a quick question for you guys." And I completely changed the topic. And you know what they did not go back to? The foolish talk about the kid not in the car. They never went back because
Hmm.
I was steering both the physical car and the conversation.
Hmm.
And so sometimes we lament what's going on in the world, if you will, and we've taken no agency, we've taken no initiative, we're not proactive at all, and we just go, "I'm at the mercy of all these 13-year-old kids." Are you? That is so interesting. Tell me why you think that, because here's what's fascinating about this, Lawson, to me. At a spiritual level, there are things we know God's going to fight us on, right? For example, if I want to be the hero, if I want to be number one, if I want to have my own glory, my name emblazoned on the big, God's going to correct me. That's pride. That's sinful, pursuit of my own recognition. I'm setting myself at odds with the God of the universe if I want to be glorified. By contrast, I'm completely jumping in on God's team whenever I want him to be glorified. And so here's the reason I say that. If you are a dad and you are attempting to have your kids hear God's voice, if you are attempting to have your kids have God's priorities be their priorities, if you are attempting to have your kids know their identity in Christ or in God, as opposed to what the world will tell them, you have strapped on like Team God clothing and you are on the right team. Now, does that mean you're going to get everything you want and it's all going to be easy? No. But here's what you do know. You're pulling on, it's like a tug of war, and you've decided to get on God's side of the tug of war and pull on his side of the tug of war with the author of the universe. I like our chances, right? On that side, as
Right.
opposed
Yeah.
to getting on the other side and pulling against it. Because here's the thing. God is the Father. He's the Father. Father. Jesus said 160 some odd times, "My Father, my Father, my Father." Whenever we are a proactive, engaged, spiritual dad, we can be assured that God wants us to win at that game because in the end, he gets glorified as being the Father, not us. And we know we're
Mm.
on the quote unquote
Mhm.
right side of history when we're
Yeah.
pulling toward God the Father, not Kent the Father.
Yeah. I'm gonna say one more point and then kind of wrap this episode, and then I want you to close us up with just the reason that this series exists and
Mm,
kinda some of the key takeaways, so be thinking about that. The key reframe here is you may not be the loudest voice, but we can still be the clearest, and by extension, the most influential. We're not gonna compete in the way that the world, comes at us and comes at our family and comes at our kids, and so don't. Like, that's a losing battle. So change the game and 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 use our resource that is far more superior and far more powerful than anything the world has to offer. And sometimes, and this may be a whole separate issue, I don't wanna get into it, but sometimes that means you go, "Hmm, they are sitting right there dead front center of that huge loud speaker, and I'm gonna have to go be the bad guy, and I'm gonna have to go change this setup, and restructure our environment and introduce some new habits." And sometimes that means that you are not gonna be loved and liked and exalted, in your decision.
So
You know?
true.
And you know what? That's okay. That can be okay. How you do it, when you do it, the relationship that you have, and the way that you influence, that's a whole separate subject. But as dads, stepping in is part of what we've gotta be ready to do. That's my main point on that. But the reframe is, we're not gonna necessarily be the loudest voice. In fact, don't. Please don't. Don't be the most frantic, loudest voice. Be the clearest. And then I think by extension that therefore we can be the most influential.
And just to double down on that metaphor of the concert, I think you have two choices. If you were to walk up to your child sitting in front of the world's loudspeaker and you were to say, "Hey, hey, knock it off. That is bad. That is bad. You need to leave." Well, that's one way, and that's not always wrong. Sometimes you just got to call out sin and evil and say, "Hey, man, we're sitting in front of sin and evil here. Turn that movie off. Turn that song off. Got it."
Mhm.
However, often, and I would argue probably more often, you
Mm.
can just point them to the better thing in the other corner. You can say, "Oh, you know what? Look, I understand you're having fun, but let's take a quick break because I want to show you something." And you walk over to a different part of the world, different part of this metaphorical stadium, where over here you have this lavish buffet. And you have really pleasant music because you can hear it and it's not hurting your eardrums. And you're attracting them to something that is a positive, better place, not just telling them to stop dealing in the negative. And I think often dads forget that. And they think, "Oh my goodness, I got to take them away from all these, shiny objects and all this fun and take them over to this boring thing where they sit in a lecture hall." And I'm
Right.
like, "No, man. No."
Right. Right.
Jesus said, when we're in him, we are one with the Father. We are one. We're unified. We are the way to peace. He didn't say, "I'm just going to give you peace." He said that, but he said, "I am the peace. I am the way, the truth, and the life." Like real water, water that does not run out. That's what Jesus is promising. So it's not some negative trade. Yeah, I'm not just telling you to put down the bad thing and come enjoy something suboptimal. I'm telling you, "Hey man, there's a better way. There's a better way. Come on over here and you can have relational harmony and joy and not feel guilty every, Monday after your lousy weekend." Let's not just use negative as the reason. So, to wrap this series up, here's what I would say kind of as a closing thought. Um, Number one, if you're dialing in again, if this was your first episode out of the six, we'd encourage you to go back. There are some framing things we did early that would help you internalize the 6-part series. But even if you don't do that, here's what I want you to know. Dad, number one, you are not alone. If you think life's difficult and challenging, so do tens of thousands and millions of other dads. Welcome aboard. Number two, you can be effective and you can be faithful in the middle of this world despite those challenges. And number three, you can experience a joy and a connection with your wife, your kids that is deeper and more valuable than just, you both play in the same fantasy football league. Like there's a deeper level of being able to work with your family, and you can get to that place where you can stand before God and say, "Hey, I gave every effort to have my kids know who you are."
Mm.
That does not necessarily mean it works out perfectly on earth. We've cited that a number of times throughout this series. Hebrews 11 says all those heroes of the faith, they saw it from far off. They didn't get exactly what was promised here on earth. You may or may not have all your kids like you and want to hang out with you at Thanksgiving and Christmas. However, let's stack the deck in our favor and let's not just run out of time. Let's not just be bad communicators and blame it on our kids, etc. Let's not just react. Let's not be a hero. Let's be an example. Let's not give up and think it's too late. And instead, let's be really clear when the world is loud. And we trust that you will do that with me and Lawson. And we say this all the time, often on the episodes that we record. You are not a father on accident. So go be a father on purpose.
Right on.